welcome back to another video. So looking in my miscellaneous folder, I actually had these sketches of two Kageyamas. So one was Kageyama from Haikyuu in my style, and then another one was of Kageyama Shigeo. So Shigeo is Mob. If you guys aren't familiar with the anime Mob Psycho 100, I highly recommend you watch it. I believe I mentioned like almost 2 months ago that I kind of wanted to make some fan art of animes that I really enjoy. And I started off with making skate fan art just because I had like a re-spark of wanting to draw mostly like manga, but I do like manga and Reki. They're both very, very cute. And I like a lot of the characters from that show in general. So maybe I'll revisit drawing more skate fan art in the future. But I wanted to draw mob fan art. So yeah, if you guys aren't familiar with Mob Psycho, how do I describe it? The character that I'm going to be drawing today is the main character, technically. I believe he's in middle school, and he's basically like a psychic. And he meets like a guy named Reagan, or Arataka Reagan. So this guy is like a con artist, and these guys have like a relationship of like a mentor-mentee kind of relationship, I guess, if that makes sense. So I actually really like this anime like quite a bit. I love any anime that has a lot of like character building, more kind of like slice of lifey. This one's very much shonen, but for me, even though it has kind of like that typical shonen vibe, there's just something special about it that I really like. And maybe it's because Mob himself isn't the usual like gung-ho, fiery ball of sunshine kind of character that you always have. Mob is kind of more like innocent. He's a little shy, not as confident, very cute. I don't know. He's kind of like, for me, like want to protect, do not harm him kind of feeling. But you know, there's a lot of character development both for him and for Reagan as well. And another character that I really like is Ekubo. And if you saw me in the beginning when I was sketching, with the rough sketch, I actually was gonna throw Ekubo into the illustration, but I decided not to. So I'm gonna try to feel it out a little bit. I do find Mob Psycho's just art style in general it's very simplistic, especially for like the eye style and stuff. So I feel like sometimes it's hard for me to translate it in a way that I don't want to lose the essence of what Mob looks like, but if I translate it directly into my style, I would lose that like almost immediately. So I try to do my best kind of with the balancing of it. And I have done Mob Psycho fan art before. I've made acrylic charms, and I've made I think a poster or like a print, and then I did some sketches in my sketchbook at the time because I think I was like super hooked when I was season 2 for Mob Psycho. But season 3 I absolutely really love. And like I said, I think if you're more, I don't know, I enjoyed the growth of the characters and character building. I'm also more of a slice of life anime person now that I'm a little bit more older. I do like things that are a little bit more slower paced, though I do think Mob Psycho is just well paced in general. I do like Mob Psycho quite a bit, like I mentioned. My taste in anime kind of flip-flop kind of everywhere, so I don't know if like Mob Psycho would be specifically actually maybe okay, let me explain it like this. I think a while ago my brother made me do like the top 9, like your 3x3 for animes, and ours had like some similarities but a lot of differences. I think a lot of the ones I picked kind of either give me nostalgia, or I just have a little bit more like emotional attachment or something, like, or it just makes me make me feel good because it's kind of more like a wholesome anime in a sense. Or if it just has like really good characters, good storyline or animation or something like that. I really like Gintama as well. I would love to make Gintama fan art, and the fact that Gintama is gonna have I don't know if it's considered a spin-off, like Ginpachi Sensei. So basically there's like little shorts at the end of some Gintama episodes, and the characters are like in a school setting and stuff, and I just think it's nice because it's been a while since we had new episodes for Gintama in general for the series since it ended. But yeah, enough of the rambling. Let me talk about the illustration a little bit before we get too far into it. So like I said, I was gonna draw Ekubo and Mob together. I was actually planning to draw both, or not both, I guess all three. So I wanted to draw Mob and then Reagan and then Ekubo together because they're kind of like my top 3 favorite, and they're kind of like, in a way, like a little trio. But there's like a bunch of other characters I would love to include, but just to keep it simple for today, because it requires me to do a little bit more planning for composition, or interaction between 2 characters is a little bit more difficult for me. I would have to literally plan things out. Yeah, so I decided to just do Mob. Also, I sped up the footage here because I wanted to show you guys me working on the background that I don't end up using. So yeah, the entire blue kind of sunny sky-ish kind of look I am going to get rid of completely. It just didn't really make sense for the pose angle-wise. So once I did the clouds, I was thinking like the circular kind of little area for it didn't really make sense. I think I did a few other attempts that I didn't include into the video, but I remember seeing an image that I think it was Mob, just like maybe he's standing in a field or something, but there's really like cute simplistic flowers around him. And I think in general, like, because Mob's style is a little bit more simplistic in a sense, I kind of wanted to reflect that in the background a little bit. Can you guys tell how scatterbrained I am? I actually drew this like, I'm not sure when you guys are gonna see this. I think it might be a week or 2 ago for you guys. So yeah, I'm kind of trying to rack my brain around what I remember thinking while I was drawing this piece. But what I wanted was that I wanted the grass and the flowers to be visible in a sense. But because I'm not gonna have a lot of patience kind of rendering everything out, I'm just gonna put indication of some like blades of grass, some really simple shapes for like flowers, or like bunches of different kind of foliage on the grass, or like the little patch of clearing that he's kind of standing on. And I'm gonna blur it because I want Mob to be in focus as usual, and I do this method a lot, especially because I don't know, backgrounds are still something I struggle with a lot. I think I'm okay doing backgrounds that require like a sky and doing clouds and things like that, more organic. But as soon as we have to do like things that have a little bit more shape and form, like even trees and things, or like buildings especially, is something I definitely struggle with. I think it's because perspective is hard, first of all, but it's not impossible. But the detailing for buildings, for it to make sense and to remain in focus, I feel like I always make it too simple and it looks like a 5-year-old drew it. So I try not to tackle that quite yet until I actually get familiar with drawing that for maybe a few studies or something in the future. But for now, we're gonna stick with grass and some simple shapes of flowers and just like other foliage. I'm adding a little bit of leaves and like darker shadows to underneath the shapes so that it looks like they're placed a little bit more neatly on the ground, and not completely entirely flat, hopefully. Pose wise, I did map out the pose a little bit with a larger, like the painting brush that I use, just so we can get the body down first. And I struggled with the hands a little bit because I didn't know if I wanted him to outreach his hands like forward and above, or did I want it to do more of a different kind of gesture with the fingers and stuff. Instead I went with just like open palms, just to keep it simple, so that when I do place the flower in between his hands, it doesn't get overly covered, if that makes sense. Like the flower would be placed majority covering just his hands, or like his palm of his hand, if that makes sense. So for the background, I also decided to do a little bit of an overlay and a multiply layer on top so that we can make it look more like a clearing. And then I'm going to dim down that blend mode a little bit so that's not too jarring. And then after that, I actually end up kind of stretching the background a little bit, because I think that I want him to be kind of like closer to the center of where the clearing is, rather than him being right in front of it, because it doesn't really make sense. So I'm just stretching it to make sure that it kind of I guess it reflects what I wanted a little bit easier. For coloring, as usual, I make a new layer and I set this layer below my sketch layer, and my sketch layer is set to multiply, and it's kind of set to a more kind of like mid-tone brownish color, so that it's a little bit softer before I actually start to color in everything. So for coloring, I usually go in step by step, go with skin and then maybe eyes, and then hair, and then clothing, and then any like extra things. But the reason why I do skin first is that usually I like drawing the face, which requires usually a lot of skin, so, and it's a little bit easier for me to color this way, so I kind of block out the skin first and then alpha lock the whole color layer so that I can do soft shading without worrying about the colors kind of bleeding everywhere else. They kind of stay in where my initial first pass, where the lighter yellowy peach tone was, and then I don't have to worry about cleaning up the mess. I can just focus on getting the shading correctly where I want it to be, adding more warmth to the face, and then as we move on to clothing and hair, I'll slowly kind of like chip back into the skin so that we can kind of clean it up so it doesn't like stay this messy. For the most part, I do like coloring on all in one layer. I just have to be a little bit careful and a little bit neat for some areas. So that's still another reason why I try my best to work from skin, and then the last thing I do is usually clothing. Just because skin, I want to be, I guess, like covered the most. Like, because I do it first, everything else would be on top of it, so it makes sense for me that it's kind of like the most clean. And it's also like helps me at least make the bangs or the hair that surrounds the face a little bit softer too after I've already established the skin. But like I said, it's mostly because I like drawing the face the most that I like coloring the skin first, because I like to knock it out and make sure that it looks somewhat correct. Otherwise, I probably don't like the drawing if I don't really like how I drew the face. So yeah, it's kind of my process of how I determine what I usually shade and draw first anyways. And usually when I separate each part or work on each individual part, I also try my best to establish the lighting and all the shadows that I need right off the bat. We can play with some multiply and overlay and add layers afterwards to adjust the lighting if need be, but for the most part I do like doing all the shadows and lighting right when I'm actually coloring in that portion. I know some people like to do all the flats first, and I feel like that works well. I guess it depends on your process, but I know most people who do that are usually people who use like multiple different layers for each individual item, because that's what I usually do when I'm working with line work. It's easy for me to bucket in colors and then separate each individual part for like its own separate layer so that you can easily shade in different objects and just clip layers to that instead of having everything on one layer like this, which is kind of like the downside of it, because if I really needed to change just the color of the hands or something, I do have to make sure that the clothing doesn't get affected or like anything like that, or I can't like manually fill. I'm usually for the most part manually coloring everything in. I know some people rely on the bucket tool. Procreate's a little bit interesting in terms of the bucket tool though. I think if you work with line work and you use like the reference tool or setting for the layer and you drop and fill your colors that way, it's pretty accurate and it fills right up to the edge. But I find that if like, it probably depends on the brush you're using too, that if you pretend fill out the outline of a shape with like manually filling and then you drop a color into it, I do find that there is a little bit of an outline of where your manual fill is and where you drop the color in, so that there's a little bit of a like transparency gap there, which is why I usually like to manually fill anyways, just because I think it's a little bit more foolproof. It's just a lot of cleanup afterwards, or you have to be careful while coloring around different objects. Like when I was coloring in Mob's jacket, I'm basically coloring around the hands, like in between the fingers and stuff, just to make sure that I get all the clothes, but I don't want his hands to be covered with the black because it doesn't really make sense. Also, when I was doing the hair as well as the clothing, usually I will think about the lighting and then try to block in the colors like at the same time. I think when I started doing Mob's like jacket, it probably makes the most sense. So at the very top where his shoulders were, I made it kind of like a dark grayish purple color, but immediately where his torso is, which is going downwards, I made it really dark, so that I can easily seamlessly blend the colors downwards, instead of me doing kind of like filling everything in with the gray color that I did on his shoulders everywhere and then manually putting back the black, because like I said, if you're doing it like each separate part as its own layer, then it probably would be easier to just like fill the flats like as separate items or whatever. But for me, if I fill everything with the gray and then do the shadow on top, sometimes it does confuse me, because sometimes I miss some areas and then there's just like a jarring thing of gray somewhere that I maybe just missed. So it's just easier for me to think in that way of like, if it's getting darker, I might as well just start coloring with the darker color rather than filling everything with just one flat color. But for the most part, it's just preference, and probably just my brain trying to justify why I do the things I do, even though it's probably not necessary. So once I'm pretty much done with all the colors, I merge my sketch layer after changing the sketch layer's color to match a little bit closer to each individual object. And I do that by using the alpha lock, so that we can lock the pixels and then color my sketch without worrying about like going everywhere. I'm just literally coloring the lines of my sketch. And then once that's done, I merge everything. So I merge, or not everything, I merge my sketch and my colors together, and I leave my background untouched. And then now we're in the rendering phase, which is the longest part for me. So that's probably the rest of this video will just be me trying to fix up and rendering everything to make sure that things look clean and for the most part a little bit sharp and clear. I'm trying to think what else that I wanted to say about this, because I don't know. There's like a lot of fan art that I want to do, but sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit hesitant to make them for videos sometimes, because it is very much, well, I guess like I treat all my videos pretty much as quite self-indulgent, so I guess maybe it doesn't really matter. I'll see which ones I'll take you guys along with, and then which ones I will leave as just kind of like self-indulgent little doodles or drawings here and there. I'm also still debating whether or not I want to switch back to the Paper Lake screen protector. I don't know how noticeable it is. Every time I'm like color picking, so like sometimes I'm holding the whole barrel of the pencil really close to the actual iPad, you can actually see the reflection of the white on the iPad, and I feel like the screen protector, even though like it has that texture, it is very gritty and it does have like that matte feeling to it, I do find it's a little bit more reflective still compared to the Paper Lake. I might have to grab my old iPad to check just to make sure I'm not being crazy about this, but it does bother me a little bit because I think a couple of days ago I was sitting downstairs on the couch, and we have like kind of larger windows in our living room area, and I was waiting for like the air fryer to finish preheating, so I was like, oh, maybe I'll just take the extra like 5 minutes to do a little bit of doodling or drawing. And even with my brightness all the way up, I could still see my reflection. So I don't know, I don't remember having this problem before, but usually I work in like darker areas anyway, so maybe it's just the lighting thing. I'll see. Because even like when I'm recording, I kind of noticed that I have to be a little bit wary about my reflection in the iPad. So hopefully, maybe I'm just crazy. I don't know. I'm still thinking if I want to switch. Because I also noticed that this screen protector gnawed through my pencil a lot quicker. And I don't think, maybe just a little bit, I did change like my pressure of my hand sensitivity and stuff, like just my normal pressure, because of, I feel like the iPad was just a little bit less responsive compared to my other one, and it might be because of maybe my pressure sensitivity curve, which I've changed again, but it also might be because this screen protector might be causing it. So I don't know if I was pressing harder because it's just not sensing it as easily. We'll see. I don't know. I'll let you guys know if I do end up switching again. I do think that this one still works very well, and it is much more affordable, so I'm not gonna peel it off or anything. I'm gonna weigh out my options first, because I don't think there's anything wrong with this for the most part. And I don't mind buying extra nibs every so often, as long as it's not like super often, because if it's super often I'll probably definitely switch, but if it's not too often, I don't mind buying like a nib every year or something like that. Like, as long as it's serving its purpose, I don't really care, I guess. So for mob, Or at least like my idea was that because of his palms are kind of like outstretched a little bit, I do have him, or I will have him, using his psychic powers to kind of float up a sunflower. I think a lot of people, including myself, associate Mob with sunflowers and stuff, so I think it's because of it's an opening or an ending in Mob Psycho, but yeah, he's associated with sunflowers, so I know a lot of people will draw him with it, and I wanted him to have one again, and I kind of debated whether or not I wanted to do a whole field of sunflowers behind him, but your girl has no patience. I do not want to do that. There's like a few illustrations that I did sunflowers like behind the character. I think I did one for a commission, I did one for Dogyam, and I had one for Sunny, like from Niji-san En. And yeah, I think 2 out of the 3 I did not finish because the background is painstakingly long and I don't want to take time to actually draw that many sunflowers. But for the most part, yeah, I think Mob turned out pretty cute in the very end. I do feel like sometimes seeing Mob in, I guess like more or less when I draw him, maybe some people can draw him a lot cuter, and I've seen like a lot of cute fan arts of him. It's just like the simplistic eye style might be a little bit jarring, so apologies if some people find him a little bit creepy. I did not intend for him to look creepy, so hopefully he looks still cute. I trust me when I say this, Mob is a very cute character. Like, he's very endearing, very wholesome, so yeah. I highly recommend you give Mob Psycho a go if you can. I really thoroughly, I think in terms of which seasons I enjoyed, I think it was like first season, or I'll say third season is my favorite, then first season, then second season, I think. Even though I remember the most probably from the second season and third season, because they were, I guess third season is quite recent, but second season, I don't know why I have so much recollection of it for the most part. Maybe it's because of certain other characters that show up into that season. I'm trying to think what other fan art I wanted to do. I was actually thinking about doing like childhood anime fan art, or I guess like it wouldn't be, I don't know, would middle school be considered your childhood, or would elementary be considered more of your childhood? I think because I got into anime during my middle school days, I kind of wanted to draw animes that I was interested in during then. So like it would be like do-da-da-da. I think there's Lucky Star, obviously Haruhi, Shugo Kara. What else is there? Fruits Basket. I love Fruits Basket. What else is there? Orin High School Host Club. There's like a bunch of different shows that I probably could do some fan arts of. I don't know. Fairy Tail. I started in, I think actually I watched Fairy Tail in high school and I dropped it. Yeah, there's about like a bunch of different ones I could do. I think in high school also was Kimi ni Toroke, and I don't know, I would love to draw, oh no, I forget her name. It's either Sawako or Sadako. I think it's Sawako and Kazehaya. I think it would be very cute to draw them. They're like, I think that's still my favorite shoujo manga. Like, I waited so long for the chapters for it to be completed. I love the relationship so much. They're so cute. Another thing I would like to attempt would be like Natsume Yujincho. So like Natsume's Book of Friends, I would like to do another fan art for. Or maybe even like Chihaya Furu. I don't know how to translate probably those characters into my style, because they seem very much just like plain high school students in a sense, for the most part. So I feel like it's gonna be a little bit more difficult compared to like maybe like Kazehaya and Sawako together. I don't know. I think about it a lot, about like animes that I really liked in the past, and it'd be kind of interesting to see how it will look in my style, but I still want to try my best to represent the style, if that makes sense. Because I think that's another thing that I admire from artists that I really like, is that when they're asked to draw like a certain character, the character still feels very much like that character. Like they're able to keep certain characteristics of that specific character and still make it look like them, but it's still in their style. I'm trying to remember what's the artist that I really like, that I met at Oda Fest, and he has like, he draws like I think a lot of Gintama fan art, and the way he draws Gintoki, it's like, for me it's like, it's very recognizable. It's his artwork and his style, but it's very much like Gintoki. Like you can tell like he still has like the dead fish eyes, his hair is drawn in a very similar way, but like I think maybe it's the rendering style that makes it look like his artwork and stuff. I don't know. I would like to find a balance of that because I feel like that's something I struggle with. Because like earlier, if you saw my sketch of Tobio, like Kageyama Tobio earlier, it doesn't really look like him. But I know for a fact if I started to actually sit down and render him and try to fix it up, I would make it look more like Tobio from probably like the anime more or less, because I would try my best to like, you know, fix the eyes a little bit so that it doesn't look so large, you know, adjust the face shape a little bit, but we're not like directly copying the style from the animators or from the manga, if that makes sense. Hopefully that makes sense. I think it's the same thing like when I draw Genshin characters, because there's some Genshin characters that I think I do an okay job with making them look correct, and then a lot of them look kind of off for in a sense because they're too much in my style. I don't know how that makes sense. Like I feel like, you know, when people say like, oh, it's my style, it's kind of like a crutch kind of thing, and it no longer looks like said character as much anymore. It's like this, if you always draw big eyes on anime characters and suddenly you're drawing like Gintoki who has like the dead fish eyes, it doesn't look correct unless you're going for like some kind of satire or like high stylization, like you're drawing him in like 90s anime shoujo magical girl kind of esque, then I feel like that maybe makes sense why it's so drastic. But I think if you're trying to make like accurate kind of fan art, then you gotta keep some of the characteristics in there, and it's something I struggle with, so I'm gonna try my best to learn a lot more by doing some other fan arts, especially like Mob Psycho, which is very much a different style from how I draw. So yeah, but Mob is very fun to draw. I do like the fact that his face is very cute, very simple. The thing that throws me off is that he has lack of eyebrows. I believe the other characters have eyebrows, so yeah, like Reagan, and I know Ekubo is very expressive, so yeah, maybe in the future I'll do more Mob Psycho fan art. But I added some effects, some glowing pieces, some sparkles. I also am going to be blurring the whole piece and then making Mob and the sunflower kind of more in focus. Yeah, I think that's about it for today's session. I basically just rambled throughout today's video. I know this video is probably gonna be a little bit more, I don't know how to explain it, on the casual side of things, maybe, compared to my other videos. Even though like the style of it, and I usually ramble in other videos, is probably gonna be the same, but this it feels a lot more low effort than usual, so apologies about that. I did have fun drawing him though, so yeah, I think I just needed like that little sit down of like 3 to 4 hours and just draw Mob just for continuous time. Also, I'm adding some last layer effects, so I put an overlay layer. I'm going to be adjusting the colors, just kind of change the color temperature just a bit here and there, and I like to add different colors for different parts so that it doesn't become overwhelmingly one shade of color, if that makes sense. So I added a little bit more of that dusty brownish yellow to his face and a little bit of that cooler blue and a darker blue around the grass and his clothing. So yeah, here is Mob, and we'll do a quick time lapse, and I think that's about it. Also, yeah, there's that blob on the left that was supposed to be Ekubo, but I didn't draw him. So yeah, I think that's about it. I'm gonna leave because my brain is fairly scattered today. Yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time in the next video. Bye.